Good morning everyone, and welcome to this week's Whole School Assembly. We're going to start this week's assembly with the religious quote, which is a Jewish proverb that says, "There are no shortcuts in any place worth going." To me, this means good things, especially great things, take time. There are no shortcuts to excellence, and those who make it fast and quick realize even faster that there needs to be substance behind it. Hard work is hard work. There is no getting around it. Next, we're looking at this week's school pillar, which is community, a willingness to positively contribute to the academy life and beyond, with the courage to support others to do the same. What can you do this week to show that you're part of our great community? Remember the House Rainbow event. Have you taken part? If not, make sure you do this week. Finally, I want to introduce to you today's British value, independent liberty, which is also the theme of today's assembly. This is the right to believe, act and express oneself freely. It is seen in day-to-day life through equality and human rights, respect and dignity, rights, choice, consent and individuality. Let's see what liberty means to individual people.
Liberty is such a vast concept. For me, particularly, is freedom of speech, freedom from discrimination.
Freedom of speech and freedom of movement.
The rights for basic needs, food, water and education.
Be whoever you want to be. Yeah, that's what liberty is to me.
Liberty means that the individual is allowed to do what he or she wants to do in society.
Freedom to do what I want to do with my life.
It's a freedom of speech.
That no one can tell you what to do but yourself.
The word liberty means to me my rights and freedoms.
I like to be able to move around the world without too much hindrance.
Freedom of speech, freedom of spirit, freedom of thought, I guess.
The most important freedom to me is spiritual freedom. You just know who you are from within, and that's freedom to me.
We should be allowed to say what we want to say.
Privacy.
The right to marry who I want, which up until a few years ago wasn't possible.
Freedom to go have a good education and to use it and for jobs.
The right to vote is probably the most important to me.
Travelling where I want to travel and when I want to travel. That's important to me.
The most important liberty to me is to be who I am and to feel safe while I am being who I am.
My liberty role model is Rosa Parks.
It's Nelson Mandela.
Aung San Suu Kyi.
It's Margaret Thatcher.
Martin Luther King.
Suffragettes.
Peter Tatchell.
Nelson Mandela.
Marcus Garvey, Dr. Martin Luther King and Elijah Muhammad. And the most interesting thing about all three of them, they all have different interpretations of what constitutes freedom.
Individual liberty can be a force of good. Last Monday, the 18th of January, marked Martin Luther King Day, which is celebrated in many countries around the world, not just America. It marked the birthday of Martin Luther King Jr., the civil rights activist in the 1950s and 60s. When we protest for individual liberty, it can benefit the wider community, leading to inclusion and a coming together. This short video shows how this day came about.
Born in 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, Martin Luther King Jr. grew up in the heart of the segregated South of the United States. Influenced by his Reverend Father, he studied and became a Baptist minister and moved to Montgomery, Alabama to serve as a pastor. He saw there, as in many other southern states, that African Americans had to ride in the back of public buses. Dr. King knew that this law violated the rights of every African American. He organized and led a boycott of the public buses in the city of Montgomery. Any person, black or white, who was against segregation refused to use public transportation. Those people who boycotted were threatened or attacked by other people, or even arrested or jailed by the police. After 382 days of boycotting the bus system, the Supreme Court declared that the Alabama state segregation law was unconstitutional. In 1957, Dr. King founded the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. This was the beginning of the civil rights movement. In the years following, he continued to organize nonviolent protests against unequal treatment of African American people. His philosophy remained peaceful, and he constantly reminded his followers that their fight would be victorious if they did not resort to bloodshed. Nonetheless, he and his demonstrators were often threatened, attacked, and arrested. On August 28, 1963, a crowd of more than 250,000 people gathered in Washington, D.C., and marched to the Capitol building to support the passing of laws that guaranteed every American equal civil rights. On the steps of the Lincoln Memorial that day, Dr. King delivered a speech that was later entitled, "I Have a Dream." 1 year later, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed. The act guaranteed equal rights in housing, public facilities, voting, and public schools. Everyone would have impartial hearings and jury trials. The Civil Rights Commission would ensure that these laws were enforced. In the same year, Dr. King won the Nobel Peace Prize for leading nonviolent demonstrations. In 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated while he was leading a worker strike in Memphis, Tennessee. White people and black people who had worked so hard for peace and civil rights were shocked and angry. The world grieved the loss of this great man of peace. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s death did not slow the civil rights movement. Black and white people continued to fight for freedom and equality. Dr. King's birthday on January 15th had been observed as a public holiday for many years in 27 states and Washington, D.C. Finally, in 1986, President Ronald Reagan declared the third Monday in January a federal legal holiday commemorating Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday.
We see that individual liberty can be a force of good. However, it can also be a force of evil. Protesting for individual liberty at the sacrifice or mercy of the community values like equality and equal rights can tear communities apart. Just a few days before Martin Luther King's birthday, and on the same lawn that he made his famous speech for freedom of all people of colour, we saw rioters trying to prevent democracy taking place.
It's Wednesday morning. Thousands of pro-Trump supporters have gathered close to the White House. They've flown in from around the United States. An hour later, the man they've come to see arrives. President Trump addresses his Save America rally in the Ellipse. The crowd stretches back to the area around the Washington Monument.
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved.
Trump tells the crowd to march on the Capitol.
We're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I love Pennsylvania Avenue. And we're going to the Capitol.
They head along two main routes, converging on the building where the Senate is moving to formalize President-elect Biden's victory. 20 minutes later, hundreds are arriving outside. On the east, there's been what they called a Save the Republic rally. It now turns its attention towards the building.
I hope President Trump leads the charge into the Capitol building. That would be awesome.
They break through the barriers. At 2:30, they're into the Capitol itself.
How does this relate to you in school? As a community within the academy, we should feel free to be able to express ourselves to teachers, support staff, and other students. We should be able to share our beliefs, our culture, and our feelings. However, we need to remember to respect each other regardless of our beliefs, our choices, our culture, and our feelings. Show equality, respect, and dignity to others. Individual liberty gives you the right to believe, the right to act and express yourselves freely, but not at the expense of others. Remember, as we go forward this week, thank you for listening.